Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of Bayou Bets. I'm Zach Ewing with Gabe Henderson. This is the World Cup 2022 special edition, looking at all the odds for the world's biggest and most famous sporting event. Gabe Henderson, we just hired him. I didn't hire him because he's a soccer fan, but I'm just going to say it didn't hurt his chances. Because as you saw yesterday on Bayou Bets on our Thursday edition, Jim Derry, major strike against the man is that not only is he not a soccer fan, he doesn't seem to respect the beautiful game, Gabe.
You know, he'll come around. That's what I've learned is a lot of people. It's one of those sports where if you're going to get into it, you have to dive into it fully. And once you do that, you can't get enough.
Yeah,
It took me
Jim's
a little
old though.
longer, but
You can't teach Jim new tricks.
yeah.
I wish I shared your optimism. Cicely is here. She says Deutschland. By the way, if you're on Twitter, we cannot see your comments. So if you'd like to comment on the show, we will respond to them live. But go on over to the Bayou Bets YouTube page for that. So you can feel free to watch on Twitter, but we will not be able to see your comments there. Gabe, we're going to go through probably over the next 20 minutes or so the World Cup odds, both for the favorites, for the whole tournament, the long shots, the Golden Boot. We'll take a look at Team USA, and we'll go through group by group of each of the 8 groups. Real quick, want to let everybody know we are brought to you by Caesar Sportsbook. If you would like to bet on the World Cup, Caesar Sportsbook is the place to do it. NOLA.com/Caesars will get you signed up. You can bet on whichever game you want, and if you lose, you get that money back in form of a free bet, which you can use later on in the tournament. So NOLA.com/Caesars for that, your home for all your World Cup betting. All of our odds today do come from Caesar Sportsbook. The tournament starts Sunday. Games are typically for us in Louisiana Central Time, 4 a.m., 7 a.m., 10 a.m., and 1 p.m. And as the tournament goes on, Gabe, we lose those 4 a.m. So everything is at a reasonable time, except for a few early group stage games will be 4 a.m., so probably skip those. But the U.S. plays all of its group games at 1 p.m., and most of the games will either be at that 10 a.m. or 1 p.m. window.
Yeah, I never mind waking up at 4 a.m. for those sporting events. You know, it's the World Cup and the World Baseball Classic. Those are the 2 events you have to get up for, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
fantastic. And sometimes if you want to watch something live in the Olympics, you get that when
Yeah.
it's overseas. But yeah, we're happy to get up. I don't know that everybody is. I don't know that I'll get up for every 4 a.m. game. I think there's like 6 of them, but we'll get up for a few of them. So with that, let's dive into the odds. We're going to start with the overall tournament odds. The favorite, probably not surprising to anyone, Brazil, even if you're a casual fan. Brazil, of course, the famous footballing country, plus 375 odds, followed by Argentina at 5-1. Interesting here in that Europe, of course, has won more World Cups than any other continent. But when Europe has never lost a World Cup contested on European soil, when you go off European soil, as this one is in Qatar, it's the South American countries who have won 8 of 10 editions.
Yeah, there's not a lot of great value here, especially when it comes to Brazil and Argentina. I don't know as if people are going to be as confident in the European nations because not only based on what you said, but also because a lot of them have been playing at the club level and there's injuries elsewhere. This is a weird World Cup and it's really unpredictable. It's unlike anything we've ever seen before.
Yeah, and that is one reason why this is different. It's a good point. All of these European-based players are in the middle of their club seasons, and they really only finished playing last weekend in some cases. And so they're in the now. Not everyone starts on Sunday. Obviously, there's just one game. But like England, for instance, you see at plus 950, they play on Monday against Iran. The English Premier League, the best league in the world, just finished playing last Sunday. So for some of those players, that's only a week off. And of course, they had to get to Qatar. They had to travel. They also had to get some training sessions in with their international team. So it's a dicey situation. But if you had to pick a team off of this first page, who are you going with, Gabe?
It seems like a cop out, but I like Brazil. You know, this I don't think this World Cup is going to necessarily come down to who's the most talented. I think it's who stays the most healthy. And right now, Brazil and Argentina are looking really, really nice.
It's health and it's depth. Because if you
Yeah.
do have an injury or a guy who can't go a full 90 minutes, having those bench players. And that's why I like Brazil as well. And I know we don't want to be too chalky. The other team I'll point out is England at plus 950. I think there's some value there. That's a deep team. And we talked about how there could be injury problems. But if you look at every position group, that English squad has depth everywhere. Now, of course, they've had World Cup heartbreak time after time after time. But at nearly 10-1, I do see a little bit of value in the English there.
Yeah, I just think the English will be hurt, and I know we'll get into it a little more later. I think they'll be hurt by their defensive-minded tactics and the fact that their attack-minded wingbacks are going to be out. So that, well, other than Trent Alexander-Arnold, but I don't know if he's in the best of form. I don't know if he'll even start for them. But when it comes down to the value there, I really like Germany over England based on the blend of experience and youth that they have in their team. And England's just got one too many injuries for me to show any confidence in them right now.
Going to flip the board here to longer shots, and it's the name at the top of the list here, really the only one here that isn't a long shot that catches your eye. Belgium was one of the favorites in 2018, and it's largely the same players. Kevin De Bruyne, Romelu Lukaku, Eden Hazard. They're not in great form, and Belgium has struggled a little bit on the international stage since that 2018. But I see a little bit of value here. I mean, if Belgium's the favorite to get out of its group, if they do start to hit their stride, this is a dangerous team.
It is, yeah. Like you pointed out, though, you have the concerns of the players not playing well. I know Lukaku's missed most of the season thus far with Inter Milan because of an injury. Eden Hazard hasn't been himself since joining Real Madrid, and they're not getting younger. So once you get that so-called golden generation nearing the end of their careers, you're not going to get as much hype, and I think that's where Belgium's at right now.
People talk about Team USA and this being a golden generation, probably still at least one World Cup away from kind of being in their primes. I mean, it's set up well for the USA because they host in 2026 when this group of players will be sort of mid to late 20s in their prime. It's the World Cup after that is where Belgium is right now. And so all these guys are now either late 20s or beyond, early 30s to mid 30s. And so seeing some attrition there. Moving further down the board here, is there anybody worth a shot here, worth a couple of bucks that you would say at least has a chance?
I really like Denmark. I like the way they played at the Euros, and I don't think you can discount Croatia. Croatia doesn't have that goal scorer up top, but with Luka Modric, Mateo Kovacic, and guys like that in midfield, they're just so good.
Yeah, I think Croatia was in the finals in 2018, and again, another aging team, but certainly has proven that they can win games. Now, to get there, they had to survive 2 penalty kick shootouts, as well as another extra time game against England in the semifinals just to get to the final. So had to win some coin flips there. But at 50-1, hey, you take a shot. All right, we want to go through group by group as we are here on the Bayou Bets Special World Cup edition. Odds for Group A. We're going to start here. That's where the tournament starts. Games are kind of in order. You go A through H, and then everyone plays their second game, A through H, and then their third game. This starts Sunday with Qatar against Ecuador. So what we have is odds to win the group, then another line of odds to advance from the group, and then finally just the first games being played and what the three-way line is there for each team to win or for the draw. So you'll see a solid favorite in most groups, Gabe, and here it's the Netherlands at minus 225. Not a lot of people talking about the Dutch, and they got kind of a nice draw here. I mean, clearly the favorites in this group, and then possibly facing like a USA or Wales in the second round. And so the Dutch are talented. What do you think of them?
This is a redemption tour for the Dutch. Like we've talked about with so many other teams already, you've got all the young stars on this team. You've got the Matthias de Ligts, the Frankie de Jongs, and then you've got Virgil van Dijk, who's one of the best center backs in the world, if not the. So I really like the Dutch. I think they're a solid team, and I think they've got a point to prove this World Cup. With Sadio Mane out for Senegal, I think the Dutch are easily the best team in this group, and I think it's essentially them, and then there's a gap between the next three teams.
Yeah, and as for the hosts, Qatar, this is their first World Cup, and a lot of people think they're outmanned. I don't think they're the worst team in this field. I mean, we'll get to a couple of other teams. Saudi Arabia, Costa Rica, I think, are probably below Qatar's level. So a chance maybe for the host to stun people, because after the Netherlands, like you mentioned, Sadio Mane out for Senegal, Ecuador sort of unproven. I mean, I would say Qatar, especially if they could find a way to get a result on Sunday against Ecuador, they've got a chance to get out of this at those plus 350 odds.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like Qatar, not only with them being at home and the host of the World Cup, and historically the hosts have done really well, but they've done everything they can to get ready for this World Cup. They've played teams that are battle tested, like Egypt, who we unfortunately won't see in this World Cup. They've played Ghana, they've played Portugal, and while they did lose those games, they're getting ready for this tournament. And I think we saw what they could do in a tournament format when they played in the Gold Cup in 2021. It took, I think, an 86th minute winner from the United States to beat them, and they finished in the semifinals of that tournament. So they're a good team.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I don't think they should be overlooked, especially in that group. And the host group, when it's a host that's not a traditional soccer power, tends to be a little weaker because Qatar was the seeded team in the draw, and so they were not going to get another seeded team. So that works out for the Netherlands. I also think it works out for Qatar. Try to move a little bit more quickly through these group by groups. Moving on to Group B. This, of course, the United States group. England a heavy favorite here. And the real battle may be USA-Wales right away, that first game. You see those odds to advance. USA minus 120, Wales plus 120. It could all come down to that game on Monday afternoon.
It might, and I don't think you can discount Iran either. I think Iran's a lot better than a lot of people give them credit for. I'm personally not as high on Wales as a lot of other people. I think they're past it for the most part. They haven't looked good recently. So I think it's really going to come down to England, the US, and Iran. That could come back to bite me, but that's where I'm at.
So is there value then on Iran at plus 400 to advance?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Yeah,
Uh,
especially if they can get a result against the United States.
you also see how close that USA-Wales match expected to be via the odds. All three, either team to win or the draw, all plus money. So very well could be a tight game that could decide who advances from this group. Moving on to Group C, Mexico in a very similar situation to the USA, where you have a solid group favorite in Argentina. I mean, even these odds, if we flip back to Group B, really similar. Minus 286 for England is minus 275 for Argentina. Mexico 5-1 to win the group. And then you have Poland. They have the great goal scorer Robert Lewandowski. Probably the difference here for Mexico and for the rest of these teams is that the fourth team in the group I feel is much weaker than Iran is Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, for sure. This is one of those weird groups where you have one clear favorite with Argentina. You know they're going to get through. There's no question about it. And then there's Saudi Arabia down at the bottom, who there's really no shot that they get through. I'd be stunned if that happened. And then, it becomes who gets the result in Poland, Mexico. And it's really going to be interesting if that game ends in a draw, because it'll come down to how they compete against the other two.
Yeah,
So
don't get blown out
personally,
against Argentina. Rack up
yeah,
some
for
goals
sure.
against Saudi Arabia, and we see that's also the first game for Mexico and Poland. I believe it's on Tuesday. I mean, look, that's as big of a toss-up as you can get, plus 175 to plus 180 to plus 195 on the three-way line. So crucial game for the Mexicans right out of the gate.
Absolutely. And I personally like Poland a lot in that game. I think with Lewandowski, if they can create chances for him, Mexico doesn't have the reliable goal scorer that they've had before. So I think that's where Poland really has the advantage, is Robert Lewandowski being one of the best number nines in the world.
Mexico, by the way, has reached the round of 16. They've gotten out of the group stage in 8 straight World Cups. Now, that doesn't include 1990. They were banned from that World Cup. But in 1986 at home, they made the quarters. Starting in 94, they have made it out of the group stage every single year and then lost that first knockout game. So you're saying it could end this year. We'll see. They're going to have to probably get a result against Poland on Tuesday to have a chance to advance out of that group, and then we'll see what they can do against Argentina and Saudi Arabia. Moving on here on Bayou Bets World Cup edition to Group D. Now we see a couple of groups where there are two heavy favorites to get out. And really, France and Denmark here will be playing to see which one gets the top seed to play a second-place team out of another group versus which is the second-place team and must play another group winner. Unless, Gabe, do you see Tunisia or Australia springing a surprise here on one of those European powers?
No, I really don't. I think this is probably the most clear-cut group there is. I think the odds makers have it right. The only question is whether or not Tunisia will finish third or fourth. I think France and Denmark are a class above the other two, and it's not really close. There's not much value in this group in my eyes.
And if there is, possibly Denmark to win the group at plus 250. I mean, because if France and Denmark, I believe they play the final game, if they're both through, could be a huge advantage if Denmark were to have a goal difference edge where they would get through in a draw. So
For sure.
I think there may be a little value at them plus 250. If Tunisia is going to have a chance, they have to get a result against Denmark in that first game. Group E, pretty similar situation here. Spain and Germany, oh my gosh, it's a group of death. And then, well, Japan, okay, and then Costa Rica, possibly the weakest team in the field. Costa Rica had a very good run in the last two World Cups. In fact, in 2014, made it all the way to the quarterfinals. But this is that same generation, just severely aged. Little surprised they even made it to the World Cup. And so Spain and Germany, I mean, at this point, you're kind of just trying to rack up goals before that final group stage game so that you can get the group championship with a draw.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's some value here in Germany to win the group. I think Germany's a lot better than people are giving them credit for, especially with Hansi Flick as their manager. Spain's got a lot of great young players, though. But keep an eye on Japan. Japan could play spoiler in this group. They're a lot better than people give them credit for. You remember they gave Belgium problems in the 2018 World Cup and almost knocked Belgium out. So I think Japan's a scrappy team. I think I'm not going to predict that they do get out of the group, but I wouldn't be shocked if they did.
So that is Group E. We move on to Group F. Again, a pretty clear-cut top two here, depending on what you think of the Croats. Belgium, the favorite, and then we have Canada. Its first World Cup since 1986, drawing pretty long odds here. Speaking of scrappy teams, though, Gabe, Canada, they can compete.
Canada was playing really well in the World Cup qualifiers, and I think it's really unfair to them to give them plus 1,400 in this group. I think they're a better team than Morocco, especially with all the coaching changes and all the drama that's gone on around the Moroccan national team over the last year or so. And I'm not as sold on Belgium as a lot of other people are. I think Croatia is the best team in this group, and it's just a question of whether or not Belgium or Canada will finish second, in my opinion.
Wow. Going out on a limb there. So we have a couple of possibilities for bets there. Croatia at plus 240 to win the group, or you can go down to Canada to advance at plus 320. I don't believe Caesars has odds. Well, actually, I take that back. They do. You can go in and bet on Belgium to be eliminated in the group stage. You can go to any team and odds for their stage of elimination. And so you could get some pretty good odds on that as well if you think Belgium is going to be out. So Gabe with the strong take there in Group F. Group G, Brazil. The tournament favorites are here. Tough group, though. Switzerland, Serbia, Cameroon. I mean, there are no pushovers there, especially when you talk about the Swiss and the Serbs. They have World Cup experience. They've been tough outs in the past. You see, that'll be a huge game when Switzerland plays Serbia to see who can get out of the group, unless one of them can knock off Brazil first.
Yeah, this is just like going back to the Argentina, Mexico, Poland group. I think that you have a clear-cut winner in Brazil. You have a clear-cut fourth-place team in Cameroon. And I don't think there's much in Switzerland and Serbia and who's the better team. I really think that game will decide who gets through. Those are two really good teams, but they have two different ways of playing and two different ways of winning. So it'll be a really fun one to watch.
Yeah, that'll be one of those, hey, I don't know a ton of players on these teams if you're not a big club soccer fan, but it'll be a competitive game. It'll be a fun game and certainly a meaningful one. Finally, the last group at the FIFA World Cup, Group H. You see Portugal, a slight favorite here. Outside of that Spain-Germany group, this is the smallest favorite of any group favorite over Uruguay. Ghana and South Korea, both at 11-1. And as a Tottenham supporter, I'll throw one out for South Korea. Think you got a chance to get out of this group at plus 240. Heung-min Son is going to play. It looks like he's going to have the Batman mask on to protect a facial fracture. one of the most exciting players in the tournament. South Korea's had good results in qualifying. I think they're live here.
Yeah, South Korea is a lot better than people give them credit for. They and Japan have really come out of the Asian qualifiers and they've established themselves as good teams. I don't love Portugal. I don't love how they've performed at tournaments recently. So this is a really interesting group, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you see Uruguay there as the second favorite, and they had to get through the last chance qualifier as well. So could be a wide open group. I mean, if you want a group where you're going to take a long shot, consider a Ghana or a South Korea here in Group H at 11-1. 11-1 odds in a 4-team group. Pretty good value there. Pretty good value.
It really is, yeah.
There are plenty of ways to bet on the FIFA World Cup at Caesars Sportsbook. We talked about the group-by-group odds. Of course, each game has its own individual odds and prop bets on corner kicks, on fouls, on all sorts of different things. First goal scorer, of course. We talked about the tournament championship. Here's a couple of other ways to bet, and one of them is stage of elimination. And we're going to take the USA as an example because we haven't talked a lot about the Americans. But as we take a look at the U.S. stage of elimination, they're actually favored to go out in the group stage. Now, if you think they get out of the group but go no further, Gabe, that plus 225 at round of 16 kind of sticks out to you because if they do, I think exactly what's expected of them. They'll get out of the group and then lose quite possibly to the Netherlands in the round of 16. So that plus 225 has some value on it in my eyes.
It absolutely does. It's one of those things. I know Greg Berhalter has described this as two different tournaments. So, you kind of favor the U.S. to get out of the group because they're just so young and they're taking a healthy team to Qatar. I just don't think they're ready to beat a traditional powerhouse like the Netherlands, though. So plus 225 is fantastic.
And you don't know for sure. I mean, they could win the group, and then they would match up with the second place team from Group A, or the Netherlands may not win Group A, and they would match up with a Senegal or an Ecuador or even a Qatar, and then the USA would have a better chance of getting to the quarters. So there's obviously some risk involved there, but that plus 225. The other thing I'll point out here is if you poke around at some of these different markets, USA minus 175 to go out in the group stage. If we flip back to Group B, they are minus 120 to advance from the group stage. So not great odds there, but I will tell you that if you search every team like that, you'll find the opposite situation where there may be some arbitrage opportunities where, hey, I can get it plus money on one side and plus money on the other side, or at least close to it, if you feel strongly about the way a team is either going to get in or get out. Gabe, you talked about Belgium not getting out. You could get some fantastic odds for Belgium. In fact, I'm going to look those up, but lots of different possibilities.
Yeah, there definitely is. And just to be clear, I'm not going to go as far as to say Belgium won't get out of the group, but I think it's definitely a possibility with the teams around them and with how they've aged. Those guys are, Kevin De Bruyne aside, because he ages like fine wine. I don't think Lukaku and Hazard have aged well, and I don't think they've played well. They've struggled with injuries, so there really is a lot of risk in backing Belgium in this tournament.
I will say this, actually, at Caesars at this point only has stage of elimination odds for what you'd say are probably the most popular teams in the United States: England, USA, Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina. So you can't bet that on Belgium at this point, but keep checking. Those things may come up. Another thing you can do is bet on a team to reach a certain stage. So we'll show you quarterfinals. Here are odds to reach the quarterfinals. And to do that, you have to get out of your group and you have to win at least one knockout. Now, this is quarterfinals or better. So you see some teams, Brazil, Argentina, France, heavily favored to do that, to get into the last 8. There are 9 teams listed on the chart here down to Belgium with slightly better than even money odds to reach the final 8. Then the switch kind of flips. Denmark's the next team at 2-1. USA and Mexico plus 450 and 500 respectively at the bottom, Gabe.
I love the odds on Denmark there at plus 200. And keep an eye on Uruguay too. At plus 240, they've got 2 great goal scorers. So, if it comes down to goal difference, they could make some noise.
And we talked about Uruguay in Portugal's group. If Uruguay could win that group, they would match up with a second-place team, maybe a Switzerland or a Serbia in Group G, and so very possible for Uruguay to make the quarterfinals. In fact, if you take away the 6 tournament favorites, the only team left in the field that's ever won a World Cup before is Uruguay. Now, it was 70 years ago, 1950, they also won the 1932 World Cup. But that pedigree matters. I mean, some of those players feel that the gravitas of putting on the Uruguay jersey, those striped sky blue and white jerseys. And when you get into a pressure cooker situation, that matters a little bit.
Absolutely. And, going back to talking about the potential matchups, when you get to like Uruguay against Serbia, that if you like goals and you want to get into soccer, if you're one of those people who says no scoring so boring, you watch those two teams. You've got four excellent strikers in Darwin Nunez and Luis Suarez for Uruguay and Dusan Vlahovic and Alexander Mitrovic for Serbia. That is a dream matchup for me. I absolutely love that. And that really does become a war of attrition. And
Yeah.
both of those teams have great odds to reach the quarters. So
Would be great. Would be great if we could get that met. Now that would take a few upsets in the group stage, but we could do it. One thing we haven't talked about is the Golden Boot market. The Golden Boot for the tournament high scorer. And now oftentimes there are ties. The tiebreaker, I believe they actually changed it this year. It used to just be assists. Now it is non-penalty goals followed by assists. And so it does help to have, number one, a player whose team is likely to go deep in the tournament. You play more games, you score more goals. And number two, a guy who takes his team's penalties. Because you do tend to rack up 2-3 goals during the course of the tournament that way. Anytime there's a foul in the box, he'll take the penalty kick. Now, if non-penalty goals is the tiebreaker, that lessens just a little bit. But all of these guys you see at the top, Harry Kane, Kylian Mbappe, Lionel Messi, Neymar, they're all going to be their team's penalty takers.
yeah, and that definitely helps. Harry Kane won the 2018 Golden Boot that way because England didn't score a ton of goals, but they earned a lot of penalties and he took them. I think there's excellent value here though with Karim Benzema. He has not been France's main striker throughout his career. He had some off-field issues, and that honor went to Olivier Giroud. Now that France has got a goal-scoring number 9, especially the Ballon d'Or winner and Karim Benzema at plus 1,400, that's excellent value. Even though he doesn't take his team's penalties, he's got guys around him who can create chances for him, and he's one of the best finishers in the world. So that's who I like off this list.
The top American on the list, if you really want to be a homer, by the way, is Christian Pulisic at 125 to 1, Gabe.
That's not going to happen. I love him. It's not going to happen.
Let's talk just a minute before we wrap up about the Americans. Give us a prediction what you think their chances are. Of course, open with the huge game Monday against Wales. And then we go from there. England on Black Friday, a week from today, and then Iran to finish at the group stage and hopefully go beyond that.
Yeah, I think the midfield is really key here when you've got Yunus Musa, Tyler Adams, and Weston McKennie. When those three are playing together, they're three excellent midfielders. I really like the U.S.'s odds to get out of this group.
You can get them at minus 120 to get out of the group. They're plus 155 to beat Wales. They take care of Wales, that would go a long way. You would see some heavy negative odds on them to get out of the group at that point. And then against England, it's almost lanyap. If you can get a result against England, then you're in really good shape going into that final game against Iran. So we'll see what happens. But that's the U.S. story. They open Monday. All right, so we got Brazil as your favorite, Denmark as your long shot, and the U.S. to go out in the round of 16. Just to be different, I'll take England as my favorite, and I am going to go with... if I can count Belgium as a long shot, I'm higher on the Belgians than you are, Gabe. So if I can count them, I'll take them at 16 to 1. And I'll also take the USA to go out in the group stage. Enjoy the World Cup, everybody. We'll talk about it on Bayou Bets moving forward at 4 o'clock on Mondays and Thursdays. We'll drag Jim through those soccer segments. Maybe we'll have Gabe on as well to talk a little soccer. Monday's episode, by the way, live at 4 o'clock will be just after the USA and Wales finish up. So we'll have some live reaction then as well. Keep it locked to the Bayou Bets YouTube channel. Give us a like, give us a comment, a subscribe. Tell your friends about us, and we are here to take you through all of the sports action. Of course, American football, but the World Cup of football as well. So thanks, everybody, once again, and we'll see you next time.